Do you get excited to put your products and services out into the world, but when you're faced with a blank page trying to come up with marketing graphics, you feel really stuck and overwhelmed? Graphic design is one of those things that can appear simple, but when you go to try and do it yourself, you can soon realize that it's not quite so easy. In this episode of The Design Detective, we're going to look at the case of the marketing mayhem. This is when you're struggling to create marketing graphics. Your marketing graphics and visual marketing don't look so professional. They might be sloppy or just not so professional looking. You spend hours trying to work on them and you just really struggle to create really good quality marketing graphics. So according to our case file, you might be seeing one or more of these mysteries. Design feels like a mystery to you. You can recognize and have good taste for good design, but when it comes to creating it yourself, you really struggle with it. You tend to rely on pre-made templates or trying to imitate other graphics you've come across, and you really find it hard to create anything on your own. You often feel like something is off with your graphics. You try and work on a really nice graphic, but something about it just feels off and you just can't put your finger on what it is that's going wrong with it. So if this sounds like you might be seeing one or more of these mysteries. Your graphics don't look professional. Your graphics might look too cookie cutter and really obvious that you used a template. Designs often feel really off, like something just isn't right. And finally, you just don't know when to stop. You work on something for hours trying to tweak it, get it right, and you just don't know when that perfect moment when it's just right is. Got a tendency to fuss over designs for ages, and you're spending way too much time on creating graphics that should be really quick and just something that you want to create and get out there. So to solve this mystery, we need to learn the rules of design. Design isn't just about having a good eye for design or just natural talent that you're born with. There are actual rules and principles to design that we can learn and we can implement as we create graphics. These rules and guides are really going to help improve your design skills. They're going to make your designs look more professional and they're going to make you feel more confident because you have some guidelines, something to actually help you so you're not just faced with this blank page and no idea where to start. It's also going to help you spot when things are going wrong. If you know the rules of design, if you look at a design, you can start to look at what did I miss? What here is off? You can go and look at those different rules and think, oh, I didn't do this, or I forgot about that, or maybe that particular thing is a bit off. And so it actually helps you analyze your own designs to work out where you need to make improvements. So you're not just staring at going, something feels off, but I just don't know what. You've actually got something to look at to help you discover what's going wrong. So we're going to look today at 3 different design rules that we can utilize. First of all, grids, then hierarchy, and then the principles of design. So first of all, grids. When I first discovered about grids, I just felt like my mind was blown and my eyes were just opened up to the world of design. Suddenly it all made sense. I used to pore over magazine layouts and be like, how did they come up with these layouts? And I try and imitate things and it just didn't make sense. How did people come up with these designs and the layout styles? So once I discovered what grids were and how to use them, it all fell into place and it made a lot more sense how you can create a really well structured page. It helps you create a design that's neat and professional, but can also be dynamic and interesting. So a grid is basically just guidelines on your page, creating things like columns and margins and baselines. It's giving us a grid, a structure on our page to then put all the content into it. Grids can be simple or complex depending on the content you have and the size of the page. So let's have a look at how we can use a grid. So looking at grids. So first of all, here we have a design that hasn't used a grid. Now, it doesn't look terrible, but it does look a little bit messy. So as you can see, things are aligned all over the place. So this text here is aligned here, this text is aligned here, but this image is aligned here. And so nothing really aligns. And so the more things you have on the page, the more that's going to start to look really messy, and it can make your design look very unprofessional. So the more things you've got going on without a grid, the more mess you're going to create. Now this is very simple design because it's only got 3 elements, but you're probably going to have designs that have a lot more going on, and so not having that grid is going to start to make things messy. And even here you can see that it just feels like things have been thrown on the page. There's no real structure to it. So now what we can do in Canva is go to File, and you can go to View Settings and add guides. Now this is where you can create your own guides. So you can set up some guidelines. So here what we've done is we've created 3 columns. So let's go to our next one where we've used this grid. So as you can see here, now we've put this image within the grid. So we can see we've put it on that line and then that line. So we've got 3 columns here. So this image takes up 2 columns. So you can have things that go across columns or just stay within a column, but as long as you're using those columns as guides so that everything lines up. So now our text here starts on this second column and goes across to the third column, and the text below that also goes from the second to third column. Now we've got a bit more structure to our page because we've got these guidelines. So if we go back up here and hide these so we can look at it, you can see now that this feels a little bit more organized. So if we look at that one that wasn't compared to the one that is, there just feels like there's more structure going on. And so using those grids, even though it's just a small thing, can make a big difference in making a design look more well laid out and professional. And it gives you a guide if you're feeling stuck to how should I lay out these things on the page? I just don't know where I should put things. Will automatically give you some sort of guidance because you're like, okay, I can put this up against this line and that against that line. Maybe I want this to go across 1 column or 2 columns. So it gives you some structure and makes it easier for you to come up with a layout. So give it a go next time you're working on a design. Next, we have hierarchy. This is about considering what's most important to least important on your page and using different tools to make sure that it's clear to the viewer what is most important. Otherwise, your design's going to be overwhelming and confusing. People won't know what to look at first, what's important, where they should go on the page and how they should look at everything. Using hierarchy helps lead the viewer's eye. So it's about catch their attention, get them to read something first, then second, then last, and then making sure that we also bring attention to our call to action so they definitely go there. So it's all about thinking of the hierarchy of the elements on the page and then using things like size, color, and positioning to help create that hierarchy. So for example, you're going to want your headline text to be bigger than your body copy because that's the thing we want someone to read first. And if we've got an attention-grabbing image that we want someone to be drawn into that graphic, you want to make that big too. You also want your image to direct the viewer's eye towards your text and your content, not directing somebody off the page. So you want, if you've got a picture of a person on your page, you want their eyes to be looking at the content. You want their body to be facing it. You don't want them facing away so that someone's eye is directed away from your content. So thinking about all these things helps us create a page where it helps direct the viewer's eye. We can also bring attention to things like our call to action by making it a different color or by putting a block of color behind it, something that's going to highlight it. So out of all the other text, that particular bit of text is going to be noticed. So let's look at an example of how you'd use hierarchy in a graphic. Now we're going to take a look at using hierarchy in this example here. So this first image here, we have no hierarchy going on. So we've got some body text up here and it's going right across the page and it's quite big. We've got a call to action that's quite small and a little bit hard to read. We've got an image that's just sort of hiding down the page and our title's down here quite small. So there's just no hierarchy going on. We're not showing what order we need to be looking at things. So if someone looks at this, they're probably a bit unsure about what I should look at first. Should I just read this text here and then what's this down here about, and oh, what's this image and why is it looking off the page? I feel like I'm being told to just look away kind of thing. So there's just no hierarchy and they're probably not too sure about what this learn more is either because it's just sort of in the middle of the page doing a random spot and not very clear. So now adding some hierarchy in. So now in this example, we've used the same elements, but we've added hierarchy. So we've got a nice big image that captures attention and her eyes are looking towards the content. So it's not looking away from the content off the page, but she's looking inward to the content. She's directing your eye to have a look at that content. So we've got our headline, which is the next most important thing, and it's nice and big and bold and at the top of the page. So then we've got our main body text that someone would read, and then we're also trying to get their attention to this call to action by making it a little bit big, making it a different color so it stands out. So it's quite obvious, ooh, that's something important. So they would want to then click on that call to action because it's something that's quite clear and stands out. So by using hierarchy in the page, it helps lead someone's eye through the page, and it's a lot clearer about what they're doing. So they're getting the attention of it, they're reading it, and then they're going to that call to action. Whereas here, they're feeling lost. They don't know what they're looking at, what's going on this page. It's very confusing and they're lost. Now finally we have the principles of design. These principles really help to make better design. When you understand these principles, your designs are going to be better and you're also going to be able to identify anything that might be going wrong in a design as well, so that you can fix anything that might be going wrong. So the principles of design are contrast, balance, emphasis, proportion, rhythm and repetition, movement, variety, and unity. So let's first look at a messy design that uses barely any principles, and then look at how we can use the design principles to fix up this design.
So now an example of using design principles. So here we've got a page that just throws principles out the door. Things are just basically thrown on the page and a complete mess. So we've got here a call to action that's hard to read because there's no contrast. We've got just this little image over here. We've got text that's sort of on top and a bit hard to read in that section there. It's also just not very aligned. We've got this bit of text here, but it's very narrow and small, making it hard to read. There's no real structure to the page, and it all just feels a bit of a mess. So let's start looking at using the principles. So let's duplicate this page and start fixing it. So one principle we have is contrast. So we want to have some contrast. There is one tiny bit of contrast already on this page, and that's the fact that the text is contrasting from the background. If we had a background that didn't contrast, so let's say this background it's quite maybe grey, then we don't have so much contrast with the text from the background. So something like that would be even worse. So it does have one slight element here. So we've got some contrast with the text versus the background. So contrast is really important. But the contrast that's missing here is on this call to action. So we can't read it easily because the colour doesn't contrast very well. So we want to change that up. So now it's got better contrast. Now we want to add some balance into the page. So it feels very lopsided, all over the place. There's no real balance. So everything on the page has visual weight to it. So we want to balance things out. And part of the way we can do that is through alignment. So things like center alignment, and also looking at the visual weight of things. So this call to action feels very heavy. It's very big and bold and heavy compared to everything else. So what we can do is either match it by making these things bigger and bolder, or by making it smaller. So we might want to make our text a bit bigger and our image a bit bigger. And now things start to feel a little bit more balanced in terms of the visual weight. So as you can see there, we've got things that are very small and this very big, and it feels a little bit wonky, like things aren't quite balanced. So as you can see, just by making things a little bit bigger to match and feel a little bit more balanced, we've started to feel like a bit of a better page here. So we've made this text a bit bigger. So here it was very tiny compared to the headline, whereas this call to action was very big and this image was very small. Now we've balanced things out a lot better. So the sizing is a lot better balance-wise. Now in terms of balancing the page, it can also be positioning too. So we want to think about where it is on the page. So this, if it's over here, there's a lot of white space there. We want it in the center so it's nice and balanced. Then we're thinking about over here with the text. So if we're going to have this about half size, we want the text here to take up about half as well. That way they're sort of balancing each other out. So they're both taking up similar amounts of weight on the page. So we could probably put this here too, because it's got a sort of can combine to create the weight that evens out this image on the other side. So it balances one another out on the page, so it doesn't feel at all like one side of the page is heavier than the other. Now, of course, white space can be weight as well, but you've got to really think about the way you're using it. So another thing we've got is emphasis. So we've sort of got a bit of emphasis here on this call to action already. Maybe we could add a little bit more. Maybe we could add a little arrow or something. So maybe we could add a pointer. We add a little mouse pointer. You can just add that extra bit of emphasis on that call to action. Now, it would have been fine just as it was. We didn't have to add that, but it's just to demonstrate to you that sometimes there's something on the page you may want to emphasize, that you want to bring a little bit more attention to. And so we can do things like the fact that this is colored compared to everything else being quite plain, or we can add other little details to help emphasize it. Now you notice too that we've got a bit of repetition going on the page in terms of colors. So this green here sort of matches this green in the image. We've also got both the bits of text are black. So there's some repetition going on there. It also overall helps make that image feel unified because we're sort of repeating things that make it join together. If this here, if we made this something like yellow, now obviously we could make this contrast still. That doesn't feel quite as unified because of the lack of repetition. There's no other yellow on the page. It just doesn't match. It feels really odd and out of place, like it just doesn't fit with the rest of the design. So having that green that comes out of this, it feels more unified because we've got that repetition of color. And also with this, if we made this a color that doesn't match, see that bright color just doesn't go with anything else on this page, it just doesn't feel unified. It feels like we're trying to put two different styles in the one page. So what we can do is pick colors in here. So we can stay with that black so that it's got that repetition of the black in text, or we could pick another color that works. Now this red can work because the skin there and the little bit of the notebook there has that reddy tone to it, so that can work. And it also is a complementary color of green, or we can go for something like a brown, anything that's just going to really match. So really getting to know these principles and using them in your designs is going to really improve the way your designs look. So just looking back at this one that's a complete mess compared to using those same elements using design principles, you can really see the difference it makes.
So, case in summary, you need to understand the rules of design to be able to create good quality professional designs and identify where a design might be going wrong. You really can't just be going by eye. Obviously, after years of practice, most designers can go by eye because they know those design principles so well they start to come naturally to them. But as someone that's just starting out, just trying to figure out how to design graphics for themselves, that isn't doing this every day and hasn't got a lot of years of practice, you really need to be looking at those design principles and rules all the time. Make sure that your designs look professional and don't just rely on just hoping that you'll just be able to eyeball it and get it right. So that's case closed, and this is our final case from the Design Detective. I really hope you enjoyed this Design Detective series, and if you'd like to learn more about branding, graphic design, creativity, and using Canva to create your own graphics, then make sure you subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time.